It is 3:45 p.m. in Kathmandu. It's 6 a.m. in New York. I'm Monita Rajpal. This is World One, live from London. Aviation officials in Nepal are trying to determine what caused a small airliner to crash shortly after taking off from Kathmandu airport earlier today. All 19 people aboard the Sita Air flight died in the crash. 7 Britons and 5 Chinese were killed, along with 7 from Nepal. Being with us, is there any more idea at this point what may have caused this crash?
Just right after takeoff, the plane was hit by an eagle, and that was definitely a contributing factor.
Manish, thank you so much for that. Manish Shrestha there on the phone for us from Kathmandu. The West African nation of Mali is a country in chaos after a coup toppled the elected government earlier this year. Armed militias took control of a huge territory north of the capital. Now, the European Union says it is looking at ways to help restore order. EU defense ministers meeting in Cyprus have agreed to explore their options following a plea from Mali's fragile government. Week at the United Nations General Assembly, Mali called on the international community for military assistance. It said it needed help to defeat the rebels and regain control of the north. Errol Barnett joins us now from Johannesburg with the latest on this crisis. Errol, do we know what this, I guess if you could describe the situation on the ground right now from what you understand, what is it like now in Mali?
In a word, Monita, it's deteriorating. You've alluded to some of the problems Mali faces, the unstable government.
Errol, thank you for that. Errol Barnett there in Johannesburg. The Kenyan military says it has made significant gains in its fight against al-Shabaab. The militant group, which is linked to al-Qaeda, had carried out a series of attacks on Kenyan forces and foreign tourists over recent years. On Friday, Kenyan and Somali forces entered the city of Kismayo. Leaders of Sudan and South Sudan are hailing a peace deal that will see both their armies withdraw from a disputed border region. The two presidents also signed an agreement to settle a standoff over Sudan's oil. Negotiators is Dr. Luca Byong-Deng. He joins us now here in the studio. Sir, thank you very much for being with us. What is the main argument when it comes to negotiating the future of Abyei?
I think first, thanks a lot for the, there's no doubt.
Sir, thank you very much for your thoughts. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
You're watching World One, live from London. Still ahead. Welcome back. 3 days of meetings are drawing to an end at a secret location somewhere here in England to choose the next leader of the Anglican Church. The current Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, is standing down at the end of the year after a decade on the job. No matter who gets the job, the Anglican Church is deeply divided over homosexuality and the role of women bishops. We're joined now from London by Ruth Gledhill. She's religion correspondent for the Times newspaper. Ruth, thanks so much for being with us, for doing this. It's a really difficult decision at this point when it comes to choosing the next Archbishop of Canterbury, because right now what we understand, Rowan Williams has been seen as a relatively liberal Archbishop and has had a very difficult job of maintaining a unified Anglican Church. The next person who takes over will have that same job as well, but we're looking at some very conservative candidates.
That's right. Rowan Williams was appointed as a Liberal, but in fact he's been much more conservative.
Ruth, thank you so much for your thoughts. We appreciate your time here on World One. And we want to bring you some breaking news that's just coming into CNN this hour. Chinese state media is reporting that Bo Xilai, a man once tipped for high office in China, has been expelled from the ruling Communist Party. Short break. We'll be right back. France will unveil its budget for 2013 later today. President Francois Hollande has a tall order to fill. He must save $39 billion to keep his government's deficit-cutting promises. Yet to be published, but Mr. Hollande came to power by attacking his predecessor's policy of austerity. Now France is watching to see if he performs an about-turn. World Business Today anchor Nina DeSantis is here to talk us through that. We don't know exactly what's in this budget, but what can we expect that he will likely announce?
We have a pretty clear idea of what's likely to come out here, Monita. So what we're expecting here, as you said, he's got to save around about $37 to $39 billion.
Oh, that'll be coming up a little bit later on today. We know that he'll be making those announcements a little bit later on this afternoon in Paris time, and of course you'll have more on that on World Business Today. Nina, thank you so much. You are watching World One live from London. Still to come.
On.
The UN Human Rights Council has condemned what it calls gross violations committed by Syrian government forces. A short while ago, the rights body extended the mandate of its investigation into war crimes by 6 months. Only 3 members voted against the motion. They were China, Russia, and Cuba. But while the diplomacy staggers on, Israel's prime minister has told the UN he wants a clear red line to put a stop to Iran's nuclear ambitions. Benjamin Netanyahu told delegates Iran was close to the final stages of getting a bomb and held up this cartoon drawing to make his point. We want to get more on the reaction to this speech. CNN's World Affairs reporter Elise Labott joins us now from New York. Elise, what kind of chatter has there been around this speech after Mr. Netanyahu made that drawing?
Well, Monita, there are mixed reviews at home for Prime Minister Netanyahu.
The interesting thing is Mr. Netanyahu had called on the United States to have that red line as well for if there would be any sort of response. Has there been response from the United States on Mr. Netanyahu's red line?
Not really. I mean, I do think that there's no disagreement between the U.S. and Israel.
Right, Elise, thank you so much. Elise Labott there in New York. We want to see what newspapers around the world are saying about this. Let's begin with the Independence headline. And it says Israel tells UN Iran must be given a clear red line. And it says Mr. Netanyahu's appearance at the United Nations General Assembly will significantly raise the stakes in a years-long confrontation with Iran and potentially bring the region and the world closer to an armed conflict. It puts him at loggerheads with the White House, creating an unusual rift between the two normally steadfast allies. The Financial Times has this headline, America must not hide away from the Middle East. It goes on to say President Obama has fallen for the notion that bombing Iran would actually prevent the Iranian regime from getting the bomb. What is needed is an American strategy for the Middle East that amounts to more than an effort to minimize direct threats to U.S. interests. And finally, an opinion piece in the Jerusalem Post with this headline, Sanctions and Red Lines. It goes on to say there is a real danger Iran's leaders still believe force will not be used to stop them from achieving nuclear weapon capability. The West, led by the U.S., must make it clear to Iran the severe consequences of its actions. One issue, many views. You can read all those articles in full at facebook.com/W1CNN. You are watching World One, live from London. Breaking news from the world of Formula One. We'll be bringing you that and a roundup of all the latest sports news. Stick around for that. Welcome back. Well, after months of speculation, there has been a major driver reshuffle in Formula One, affecting both the Mercedes and McLaren teams. Alex Thomas is here with all the juicy details.
Yes, Monita, the 2008 Formula One world champion, Lewis, world sport in just over 5 hours' time.
Lots going on for you today.
Oh, yes.
All right, thank you very much for that, Alex. You're watching World One, live from London. Still to come, rivers of water and exciting discovery from the Mars rover. Come back, this is World One, live from London. We are approaching almost 7 a.m. in New York. It's almost 1 p.m. in Berlin, and it's almost 8 p.m. for you in Tokyo. We now have evidence that rivers of water used to flow on Mars. The Mars rover Curiosity has sent back images of pebbles on the red planet. Scientists think the rock looks like it once had streams of water. Michael Kahn is from the European Space Agency. He joins us now from Frankfurt, Germany via Skype. Sir, thank you very much for being with us. How much of a discovery is this, first and foremost?
I'd say it's another piece in the puzzle, in this great puzzle of what
Mars. All right, Michael Kahn from the European Space Agency, thank you so much for your time. Well, let's take a look at the weather here on Earth now, shall we? That's the one thing we can try and figure out, at least for now. Meteorologist Mari Ramos is at the World Weather Center. Of course, many times you are often tested to see whether you're accurate or not, but most of the time you are, Mari.
Well, you know, we have a team here, Monita. Yeah. Can't take all the credit. You know, one of the things about the Mars rover, I was thinking about what you were talking with that expert from the European Space Agency, is that one of the ways that they can figure out what they're looking at on Mars, Monita, is by what they see here on Earth. And there's this awesome video on NASA.com. I'm going to go ahead, NASA.gov, I should say, and I'm going to go ahead and tweet it right after this. It's really cool how they explain how what they see here on Earth helps them figure out what they're looking at in those pictures there on Mars. But anyway, let's move on. Let's go ahead and talk about something skies to be able to take a look at it. Back to you.
Oh, it's gorgeous. All right, Mari, thank you so much for that. Have yourself a great weekend.
Thank you.
You're watching World One, live from London. I'm Monita Rajpal. Thank you for joining us. We'll update you with news headlines in just a couple of minutes, right here on CNN.